Good afternoon. The time is now 12 o'clock in my watch. Welcome to Lectures Lunch number 14. Thank you so much for attending. You will see that on the opening slide, I've put up a message for you. So you must just stay positive, stay hopeful, keep going. Okay, you are not late. You can still make it. You can still pass this module with the remaining assessments. So I'll encourage you to do all the remaining activities, whether they are gradable or non-gradable activities. My name is Rendani Njinga. I'm one of your lecturers for AIN 3601, together with my fellow lecturers, Jack van Staden and Keenan Martin. I'm situated at NS Radipere Building, Office 135. That's at Muklenik campus in Pretoria. Okay, so I will encourage, I've given you my email address. However, we prefer students to send email to the course emails, which was given to you earlier this year. Okay, before we begin with this afternoon lecture, there are a few rules. Keep your microphone muted to reduce background noise and distractions. Be aware that the lecture will be recorded. Due to time constraints, I will encourage you to follow this presentation and please type your question on chat. Or I will not be taking any live questions this afternoon due to time constraints. So you can just type your question on the chat. So I'll make sure that after these lectures, I'll go through all the questions on the chat, and I'll answer them as needed. So what is the objective of today's lecture? So one, we are going to discuss the receipt in creating dashboard. So this receipt, I copied it from Jacques van Staden. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the receipt. So it's just a receipt. So you all know that receipts doesn't work for all the people. So, but it works for me, it doesn't mean that it will work for you. But however, you can just try and see if it will work for you. And number two, we'll be giving a feedback for activity 6.6. Okay, by show of reaction, can you all hear me? Okay, thanks so much. We can continue. So what are the expectations for students for this afternoon lecture? This lecture will emphasize the importance of principle in your dashboard learning journey. So specifically, we are going to look at activity 6.6. So if you learn some principle from activity 6.6 and the previous activities like activity 6.1, activity 6, up to activity 6.5, if you apply those principles you have learned together with the principle in your study material, then you'll be able to do activity 6.7. So this afternoon, we are not going to provide direct answers to assignment questions. Rather, we are going to emphasize principles. So we have realized that most of the students, they are not doing all the activities. So just for an example, activity 6.4, out of close to 4,000 students, only 800 students did activity 6.4 and uploaded it on my UNISA. So solution to activities will only be made available to students who have submitted the activities. So this lecture will emphasize the importance of principles. Okay, this is just being repetitive. Okay, so first, let's start with the receipt to create dashboard. As I've already indicated earlier, I've copied this receipt from Jacques van Staden. Okay, so one of the greatest challenges to create a dashboard is to know where to start. We have been receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails from students regarding activity 6.7. Students are saying that they don't know where to start with their dashboard or with the requirement. They don't know where to start. So most cases, students are overwhelmed by information as well as the user requirements, what should be and not be on the dashboard. Remember, in last week's lecture, we were discussing dashboard requirements or user information requirements for creating dashboard. So before you can create a dashboard, you need to have a user requirement. Okay. So what are those receipts in creating a dashboard? So according to Van Staden 2023, you can take a blank piece of paper, A4, so it works for him. But if you want to use A3, you can do so if you want a bigger paper. So this paper you're planning of your dashboard. So you need to plan for your dashboard. Read through the scenario again. Like in the activity 6.7, you must read the scenario again and make sure that you understand. Okay, guys, it seems we had a technical problem. So I will just recap what I've already said. I said in this afternoon lecture, we are going to look at the receipt to create dashboard. So this is according to Van Staden 2023. So this is a receipt which works for him. So it doesn't mean it works for you, but it's best if you try them. So let me just recap them. So it says one of the greatest challenges to create a dashboard is to know where to start. So we have been receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails from students. So students, they were saying that they don't know where to start to answer activity 6.7. So in other words, students were overwhelmed with the information according to user requirements. So you will recall in last week lectures lunch, we discussed activity 6.1. Activity 6.1, you were required to create a form, and in that form, you have to populate what information should be in the dashboard. Okay, so once you can't create a dashboard before you know what is required, what is the user requirements. So what are the receipts for creating a dashboard? So as I've already indicated earlier, this is according to Van Staden 2023. So you take a blank piece of paper. So say A4 work for him, but if you want to use an A3, you can do so. This piece of paper is your planning for your dashboard. Okay, so you must always plan. So you read through the scenario again. So in this case, for activity 6.7 or any activities according to dashboard in Learning Unit 6, you must read activities again and again and make sure that you understand what is required. So for example, for activity 6.7, you must read to see what is the Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Duma, is requesting from you. Identify the components that you think should be on the dashboard. So you just identify the components, you can list them, what should be on the dashboard. Then we continue. So you draw them on your A4 paper, try to make notes, what type of graph if applicable, you think should be in your dashboard. After that, you look at the marking guide. Will you get marked if you implement your proposed solution? So this is very, very important. So in any activities, you must always look at your marking guide before you answer any activities. We have realized that in most cases, students have been rushing through to answer the assessment before looking at the marking guide. Okay, so you must always look at the marking guide which is made available to you on My UNISA. Okay, so you can adjust your proposed solution after you have consulted the marking guide. So after you have done with your planning phase, you now need to execute your planning in Excel. So you know that to create a dashboard, you will need to do some calculations. So to help you with those calculations, there is an Excel, Microsoft Excel 365. So you must apply what you have learned in the learning unit. So learning unit 6, things which function can help you, and remember to make use of a calculation sheet. In learning unit 6, it was recommended that you must at least have 3 sheets. So your workbook must have at least 3 sheets, which means the other sheet is for data, another sheet is for calculations, and another sheet is for your dashboard. So take it piece by piece and celebrate your small victories. Do not try to do everything in one shot. So when your dashboard is done, you must test it. Okay, so you must test it before you submit it, whether you submit it to your chief executive officer or you are submitting it on My UNISA to be graded. So you will see there's very specific field you need to select before submitting it. Make 100% sure that the output is correct. Okay, so I want to emphasize this. You will be marked, you will be assessed on the output of your dashboard. So it doesn't matter which Excel functions you have used to arrive at the output. If you give the correct snapshot of the company performance in your dashboard, then you will be marked, the output will be assessed. So now for the last step, read through the activity again. Are you resolving the case study? Then look at the marking guide. Can you tick off the marks that are allocated? Okay, so if you can, you are ready to submit. Okay, so last but not least, remember we can teach you the tools to build a dashboard, but you need to think and apply the tools to build the dashboard as required. With that being said, let's move on to activity 6.6. So activity 6.6, the chief executive officer asks you to prepare a bar chart of the revenue per region to use in a dashboard she's preparing. She has asked that the bar chart be sorted by revenue, highest revenue to lowest. So this is the user requirement. Okay. This should be done automatically, as she does not want to manually sort this as the data changes. So we have given you a hint there. Consider using the sort function. Okay. So sort function is one of the dynamic Excel formulas. So you can use the same data set as in activity 6.4. Prepare the graph in Excel and submit it by clicking here. So you have to prepare your graph in Excel as is required by Chief Executive Officer. Okay, so now we know what is the user requirement and what information is needed. That we can go to activity 6.4 and extract the data, which will enable us to create that bar chart as requested by the Chief Executive Officer. Okay, so go to activity 6.4, and I'm sure you've already downloaded that data sheet when you were doing activity 6.4. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my Excel workbook. So you must just shout if you can't see that Excel worksheet. I will share it with you now. Okay, can you react if you can see my Excel workbook? Can you all see the Excel workbook? Okay, thanks so much. Then we can continue. So you will see that in my Excel workbook consists of 3 sheets. So it means the first sheet, or if from right to left, is data, calculations, and dashboard. So we always recommend that you must always have those 3 sheets. So the one for data, and the one for calculation, and the one for dashboard. So as I've already explained, so after I've done some mind mapping and I've read the user requirements, what Ms. Duma wants for the dashboard, then I've decided which Excel functions I'm going to use to create the dashboard, or to create the chart as requested by the Chief Executive Officer. So you will see that this is the same data as you have used in activity 6.4, but I've made this data, I've made a table, because I've decided that I'm going to use a pivot table to extract information from this data to enable me to create a dashboard. So as we have already explained in previous lectures, we use pivot table to summarize data. So pivot table is a great tool to summarize data. So if you are still not sure on how to use pivot tables, you must consult your AIN 2601 study materials, which is available on my UNISA. Okay, so now this is the data. So it's in tabular format. So my next sheet in this workbook, you will see that I've got is a calculations. So in the calculations, I assume that you all know how to do the pivot table. If you don't know how to do the pivot table, then you can consult your material study unit 6. There are videos there which clearly shows you how to create a pivot table. So in this case, I've created a pivot table. You will see from B1. So this is the pivot table. So on my right-hand side, I've ticked which information I want to see on the pivot table. Okay, so the rows, the market, this sum of revenue. So and here I want the current figures. So once I've got the summary, I can now extract the information from the pivot table. Okay, so what you want to communicate to the chief executive officer. So you want to communicate to the chief executive officer the revenue per region. Okay, so this is what I want to communicate to the chief executive officer. So I will have these two headings, region and revenue. Okay, so how will I extract the information from the pivot table? I use the get pivot data function. We have discussed the get pivot function in the facet class on the 11th of September. You can refer where I've shown you the syntax of a get pivot function in details with further explanations. Okay, so in this case, the first thing which I did in the region, I used the unique function. So the unique function is just to tell Excel to extract the unique information from the pivot tables. Okay, so Excel return this information, this unique information. Okay, so in other words, if Eastern Cape was appearing 3 times in the data, then with the unit function, then there will be extra function. So next, I get the pivot data function. Okay, so I'll just explain again the pivot data. So in other words, this function with these are the arguments in these functions. So in plain English, so it means I'm telling the Excel to return the revenue from this pivot table, which is situated in B1. Okay, and according to what? To the market. So the market here is what is? Here is the regions. Okay, so the market is same as regions. Okay, with the calculation, if F4, so it must match. So this figure here must match Eastern Cape. Okay, so you will see that this is in absolute value. So it means I can copy this to the rest of the rows. Okay. Okay. So, but if these are relative values, so when you copy it to G5 up to G12, it will retain the same value, 64,953. So it is important that we make B1 an absolute value. So I've shown it to you in the facet class that is FN, the shortcut to make this an absolute value is FN, and you press FN together with F4, then it will make it an absolute value. So it's indicated by the $sign. Okay, so once I've got this information, so the chief executive officer, remember the chief executive officer said the bar chart be sorted by revenue highest to lowest revenue. So how will we sort, how will we comply with the chief executive officer request? So I need to do another calculation. So I did to do that calculation, I've used sort and unique function. So you can use any other functions. You can make a combination of functions to get to the same answer. But I must just warn you. So if you use long functions, they get confusing. Some of your colleagues might not understand what you are trying to do. So we'll always recommend you to use the short function. Maybe you can combine 2 or 3 functions together. So in this case, what I did, first, there are 9 regions. So to get this, I use the sequence function. So the sequence function is easy. Okay, so sequence function here, if I can explain. So you say I wanted 9 rows. Okay, so they must start from 1 in 1 column. I've explained this in last week lectures lunch. Okay, then to sort the revenue in descending order, then in other words, from highest to lowest, I've combined the sort and unique function. So this is the function in the function bar here is equals to sort, then open parenthesis, unique. Then I want to get, so this is my arrays. My arrays is F4 to G12. Okay. Then comma, then these 2. So I'm telling Excel to sort this information according to this column number 2. So this is column number 1, and this is column number 2. So you can see if let's say if I come here and change this to 1, then it now sort according to what? To column number 1. Okay, where but according to the chief executive officer requested that it is sorted according to revenue highest to lowest. So that's why I've used column 2. Okay. So, and this revenue must be in the descending order. So that's why I've used -1. Okay. So if I change this to 1, then the sorting here, you can see it changed from lowest to highest. Okay, but the chief executive officer wanted to see highest to lowest. So I will use the descending order. Okay. Okay, so this is the descending order. So to prepare this chart, I've summarized information from the data using the pivot table. Then next step, I extract the information from the pivot table using the get pivot data function. Okay, then now I want to sort the information as per the chief executive request. Okay, so in descending order. So now we can create the chart. So you know that to create a chart, you will need to highlight this data, which then you can go to insert. So this is the the chart. So this is a bar chart, or okay, let's just try this one. Then you can see here I've got the chart. Okay, is there anything wrong with this chart? Okay, remember in your study material, in one of the videos, when you were creating the charts, so it will always be better sometimes if you can delete this chart to make your table more presentable. So if I can delete this, okay, what next? What is missing in this chart? So what is missing in this chart? I will need to add what? Add data labels. Okay, so now I've added my data tables. Okay, one thing which you must always remember is that when you get information, in most cases, is not formatted. So you must always format this information. So once you have got this chart, you can cut it and paste it on the dashboard sheet. Okay, so once you have pasted in the dashboard sheet, then you can apply what? Dashboard best practices. Okay, so again, I want to emphasize that when you will be assessed on dashboard best practices, okay, on your final output, like in activity 6.7. So once you have created a chart, you must always apply dashboard best practices. Okay, so if I click on my dashboard, so this is now my final output. So according to me, this is the same dashboard. But what is the difference between this dashboard and this dashboard? Okay, so this dashboard now is presented as per the Chief Executive Officer request. So it means from highest to lowest. And this dashboard, it doesn't meet the user requirement like the request by the Chief Executive Officer. Okay, so this is how I've answered activity 6.6. This is a suggested a solution. As I've already indicated, when we assessed dashboard activities, we only assess this output. Okay, so in other words, the Chief Executive Officers says you want to see the revenue per region sorted in the descending order. So we have sort this in descending order as per the Chief Executive Officer request. Okay, so as I've already indicated earlier, you can use any other functions or combinations of functions to come up with the chart. Okay, as long as you apply, it complies with the Chief Executive Officer's request, and on your final output, you have applied dashboard best practices. You are using the right approach. Okay, just to recap what we have discussed today, I've discussed the recipe for creating dashboard, so according to Van Staden, and I've taken you step by step in answering activity 6.6. Okay, in my case, I've used the pivot table, the get pivot table functions, and I've used the sort and unique function to sort the revenue in descending order. And I created the dashboard. Once I've created the chart, I've applied dashboard best practices on that chart. So this will be the final output. Okay. So if you're still struggling with dashboard, remember your assignment is due next week. I think it's next week, Wednesday. I'll encourage you to go back to your study material and go through those Excel functions, and you have to decide by yourself which functions will help me to create a dashboard. So you can use different formula to come up with the same answer. Okay, as long as what you are presenting or your output is per the user requirement. So in this case, is what Ms. Duma is asking from you. So you can also consult the YouTube videos, but a word of caution is you must just check which one are authentic videos. Okay, with that said, we have overrun our time for this afternoon lectures lunch. I hope you have learned something this afternoon, which you can apply it in answering activity 6.7. Okay, try that recipe by Van Staden and see if it can work for you. So this will be the end of today's lectures lunch. Thanks so much for attending, and good luck with activity 6.7 and the rest of the activities for AIN 3601. Goodbye.